Hey folks, welcome to today's video. Today what I wanted to do was revisit a video I did I think it was about 7 months ago, and I think a new comment popped up on it, and that's what made me look at it. But it was a sneak peek of the Gen 6 from LT Wright Knives. That's a knife that I asked LT to make. I came back from Vancouver Island. I used the Genesis. I asked him to make basically a Genesis with a little bit longer blade, another 2 inches on the end of the blade. I just figured that would help me baton kindling better and just be an overall better knife suited to some of the things that I've been doing. I still love the Genesis. If I have other tools with me, axe, saw, whatever, it's an awesome knife. I just am partial to the Gen 6. I just like that extra length in the blade, but with the same thickness of steel. It just makes it a very nimble knife. Anyway, I was looking on the comments there, and it said one person said, "Could you please do a video on this knife?" I think the sneak peek, I think I was just probably went over I didn't even rewatch it, but probably went over the specs and things like that. And I think that the person wanted me to actually show using it, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to baton my knife through a huge chunk of oak or do testing like that. I've already tested this knife. I think I've been carrying this knife now, I want to say close to 2 years. There was a long testing process just to make sure that it would, hold up the way that I wanted it to, and just make sure there were no problems that way. But I've tested the heck out of it, and then also just used it. And testing and using are sometimes for me two different things. Using it means that I'm using it for small carving tasks. I can be doing bigger chores with it. Whereas testing it, I'm testing the strength of the blade, doing things that I wouldn't normally do out in the field, like batoning it through the center of a big piece of oak or something. So I'm not going to do that today. What I want to do today is kind of showcase some of the fine carving skills that you're capable of doing with this knife. And also, so that it's not just a straight up knife video, I want to show a project that I've done many times out in the woods, and that's carving a spoon. I'm going to use a Gen 6 and a saw, just a Baco Laplander saw. I'm in my woodshed. It's just a nice lazy Sunday morning. I didn't want to go off out into the woods. We've got things going on. I'm working on cars. I'm doing all sorts of stuff today. So I just want to kind of tuck up in here in my woodshed and do the project here. So stay tuned. I'll be right back. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of walk around. This is just my front yard, and I'm going to find a soft piece of wood to work with. I like working with green wood. It's easier to carve. Definitely dead wood has its advantages too sometimes. Sometimes if your piece of wood is real green and it dries too quick or whatever, it can split the spoon. This is just going to be a down and dirty spoon. I don't make very nice spoons. I don't have the patience and I don't have the artistic ability to sit there and just really make them shine. I don't care. I just want to use it to shovel food in my mouth. So I'm going to walk around here, like I said, and find a nice soft piece of wood. In my area, in my front yard basically, aspen is the go-to wood. Sure, birch is great, but I don't like cutting birch down because it's a much more useful tree to me than aspen is. And aspen grow like crazy. They just grow like woods. So I'm looking over here. I see a nice tree about the right size. I'm looking for a particular diameter, approximately wrist size, maybe a little smaller than that. My wrist anyway. And I want the trunk to be semi-straight where I'm going to be working on it. It's not, extremely critical that it's, perfectly straight, but I kind of like it to be. It just makes it easier to work with. I'm thinking right here, that looks like there's a spoon in there somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest this piece of wood right here and take it back to my work area. I want it to be knot free too. I'm just kind of getting these branches out of my way. I'll probably go right underneath that. There's a knot here, but that'll be fine. That'll be in the handle. I don't want the spoon end to have these knots in it, so I'm probably going to come down here. And there's a lot I can work with right here. There we go. got my piece of wood here. This is actually a little smaller in diameter than I normally like, but that's okay. I mean, it doesn't always have to be a huge spoon. I have a tendency to make pretty good sized ones. A lot of times these trees, they don't grow perfectly round. In other words, there's a flat side to it. It's kind of oval or whatever, so there's a little bit of a flat side to it. I'm going to try to utilize that in the bowl of my spoon. But for right now, I need to make some initial cuts. And I like to have a handle on the end of the bowl of the spoon to help me work so I can turn it around and always have a handle. So that's what I'm going to do first, is I'm going to kind of figure out where my handle's going to be, where the bowl of my spoon's going to be. This one's a little crooked. So down here is where I'll make the handle. That'll be fine. So I'm going to make a surface cut in this all the way around it. I'm going to go in about, well, of course it depends on the diameter of the piece of wood you're using, but in this particular case I'm going at least 1/4 of an inch all the way around. I can always cut more later. So that's the handle section, and then I want to give myself plenty of room to work, so this is going to be the bowl of my spoon. And I'm going to do the same cut right there. So here's my Gen 6. You've seen it in other videos. That batoning video I just did not that long ago, I used my Gen 6. You know, knives are very subjective. And if this knife doesn't work for you, believe me, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying this is the end-all knife. This is the knife that works for me, and it works very well for me. A lot of people are sold on Moras. A lot of people, to do this project, would carry a spoon knife with them or a hook knife of some sort. I don't always want to carry that stuff. If I'm camping or, you know, car camping or just going out in the woods to do projects, sure, I'll break out my spoon knife and bring it along. You know, it's small, it doesn't weigh that much. But for me, being able to carve a spoon or do tasks like this that I have had to do out in the woods, if I can have a knife that can do all that stuff plus bigger projects, it's quite a bonus. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I need to remove some material from the handle that I'm going to eventually carve off, and also the main reel handle. So I'm just going to set this up here and do a little of the forbidden batoning. So I can shape the handle later. I like to kind of work on the bowl first, because if I screw up the bowl, I didn't put a lot of time in the handle, and once I get the bowl done, I'll just be real careful with the handle part. I may shape it up a little bit as I go, but for right now, that's good. So I can kind of see in this piece of wood that it's got a flat spot. And for me, a good spot to start is right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and enhance that flat spot. And then I'm going to get the bark off the other spots. And when I get done with this, it was shaving sharp at first, and with all these cuts, and especially when you cut and you fall into a backstop, you know, a backstop of wood, or if you baton a cross grain, you will dull your knife. I don't really care what kind of knife you have. If you do enough carving on it, with it rather, you're going to eventually dull it. So when I'm all done with this project, we'll go inside and I'll show you how I hone my knife. That's plenty deep enough. And what I'll do sometimes when I've done this rough carving like this, you're not going to get this super smooth like you would if you had a crook knife. I mean, that's just, you're just not going to. And what I'll do sometimes is I'll take a coal from a fire and put that in there, put a coal in there, and burn off some of this fuzzy stuff from the wood. This doesn't bother me at all, just I don't mind a little bit of fiber in my diet. I've never had a problem with it. I want to lighten it up, so I need to take some wood off the backside without going too far into the bowl. I figure I can probably take about that much off. But I'm going to go slow and gauge it as I go. This is the part you don't want to screw up. Try to get some of this extra weight off of here. I like my spoon handles to be pretty robust, so right down here. This is about the diameter of my thumb. I'm going to leave that there and then just try to take some of this material off. When I was at Blade show, there's a huge knife show in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was there last year, I believe it was, and I did a demonstration out in the parking lot, and I had 2 pieces of aspen. And what I did is I went ahead and did feather sticks with a ferro rod, and this was all with this knife, with the Gen 6. So I just did some basic feather sticks, batoned down a big log of, or a decent sized chunk of aspen, made feather sticks and made a ferro rod fire. And then I took another piece and made a bow drill set and was able to get a coal and flame and all that. And at the very end, I started on a spoon making project, and then my time was done. I had an hour, and I was able to do a feather stick fire, like I said, bow drill fire, and start on a spoon project, and then took it back inside. Worked on it there. Thick right here. It's going to be a little bit cumbersome to use, so I'm going to try to work on that a little bit. And then also where these saw cuts are, I don't like leaving those gaps in the wood. I just don't think it's as sanitary as it could be, so I like to try to get rid of those. I don't usually have a problem washing my spoons and getting all the gunk out of there, but the more of these little cracks and crevices you have in here, the more chance that you're going to leave food inside of there. So I like to try to clean that up a little bit. Now the ridges inside the bowl, there's really not much you can do about that, like I said, unless you take some more time and throw a coal in there or something. We got a lot of material back here that needs to be removed. But like I said, this is where I want to go slow. It's about time to take off the handle. That's what I've got so far. Pretty rough, but that's how I roll most of the time. There's a little knot on the end of the spoon there. You can see it right there. I just got to be careful of that. Not a big deal. It's just a little harder carving right there. It's a soft wood, so it's not that bad anyway. But just kind of go slow and be careful. So this is something that I always do with my spoons. You got to be kind of careful on this spot, but I like to make a back cut or a stop cut. And then carve like a 7-notch into it. just like that. And that's my lid picker upper for my bottle, for my cup, or my bush pot, whatever. So it is what it is. I carved it with a 6-inch blade. I'm not very artistic. This is just how I make my spoons. But I just kind of wanted to showcase. I haven't done a video really on the Gen 6. I did a little bit of testing and stuff like that, kind of a sneak peek deal, and I just wanted to show it in action. You know it can do the bigger stuff. It can baton. It's not a chopper. I didn't want it to be a chopper. That's not what it's for. You can do a little bit of chopping with it, but it's just a good all-around knife that I find very useful in the woods, and it's I love it. But anyway, there's a couple of little tricks that I do for my spoons. Leave that handle on there, that really helps. And once again, I like the lid picker upper. Alright guys, hope you liked the video. Take care. Oh wait, we're going to resharpen it, aren't we? We're going to rehone it. Alright, come with me, we'll go in the house, we'll touch her up. Feels pretty good. The very tip of the blade is where you'll get the dulling action, because that's where I used most of it, was the gouging, and just the tip always seems to get used quite a bit more. It's still pretty dang sharp. I might use just a little ceramic stone on it real quick and then strop it up. Alright folks, well I'm back in my garage. I got some of the honing or sharpening utensils that I use. When I was out on Vancouver Island, I used the Genesis, like I said before, in A2 steel, and that's what this Gen 6 is made from. This is bothering me. And all I had to do was strop it on my belt. Now I did strop it basically every single time I used it, but that's the way I like to maintain my tools. If I use it, I'll strop it a little bit, and then it's bam, razor sharp again. I'm not going to be able to get this on camera. These fluorescent lights don't work too good in the cold, and my eyesight's going. I don't have a lot of skin to show. So that's still shaving sharp. Probably won't see the little hairs on there. I don't have very much hair left on my arms, or my back of my hands is how I always check the sharpness of my blade. But it's still shaving sharp in the middle. There's a couple of little hairs there on the tip, but I can tell just by feeling it, it's not quite as sharp as it was. But now I know it's still almost shaving sharp, but not quite. So these are my go-to stones if I need to sharpen my knife. These are diamond stones. It's DMT, Diamond Sharpening System. I've used these for years, basically my whole adult life. I've got extra fine, fine, and medium, or maybe this one's coarse. I wrote it down. That one's a coarse one, fine, and extra fine. I do not need to use these diamond hones right now on my knife. I just don't need to. But I use these quite regularly if they get fairly dull. In other words, if you have to sharpen your knife as opposed to hone it. People get all hung up on terms like that. But anyway, so my go-to stone is this ceramic stone. And I really should take it in the house and wash this black stuff off. It fills the pores in there and stuff. But this thing is like smooth as a baby's butt. I mean, just extremely smooth. So my knife doesn't need that much sharpening. And I'm going to readjust the camera. I don't recommend this particular technique of honing or sharpening your knife unless you've done it a long time. This is how I learned. I could never, when I was just getting started, I could never leave a stone laying on the table and have it not slide all over the place and get the correct angle going both ways. I don't know if it's because I'm left-handed or what it is, and it's the same thing like when you're making a spoon. One side will be nicer than the other side because you're used to carving on that side. So, but anyway, this is just the way I learned how to do it. It helps me see the angle of the knife blade better. So anyway, let's get started. Okay, so my knife is pretty sharp, pretty darn sharp actually, and all I want to do is just try and maybe realign some of the burrs on the metal And these aren't burrs that you can feel, they're just microscopic type burrs. And I'm going right along the Scandi edge. I'm not giving it a secondary bevel, I'm trying to sharpen it right along the Scandi edge. And I'm just going to do this maybe 4 or 5 times. On each side. And once in a while with a longer blade like this, I'll cheat a little bit and only do the tip. I'll give it maybe a couple of passes like that and then go back the other way. Now it is, like I said, this is the way I know how to sharpen a knife. This way works really good for me. Notice where my thumb is. It's below the surface of the stone. If I have my hand up here, that's a disaster waiting to happen. So now that I did a little extra on the tip, I'm going to just try and smooth it all out together. Okay, that's about enough on that stone. Now I'm going to go ahead and strop it, and I'm going to try and strop it along the same angle of the Scandi at first. When I give my knives a secondary bevel, which I do quite often with the Scandis, I'll do it on the stropper. I won't do it on a stone. But I'm going to sit here and go over this maybe 10 times on each side. This is a strop that I made. I bought a belt at a second-hand store and then bought what looks to be like a 2x2 and then just glued it on. Alright guys, well that's it. Hope you liked the video. Take care.